The ancients had one miracle weapon that appeared on the battlefields and inflicted several heavy defeats on heavy infantry. It is about sickle-bearing chariots, a weapon designed more for psychological effect than for the actual killing of the enemy. As soon as people domesticated the first horses, they had a desire to put some of their problems on their backs, especially in terms of dragging heavy loads and moving fast. But because ancient horses were small, the size of modern ponies, no one really wanted to ride on their backs, scraping their feet on the ground, but to tie to them first dragons and later carts. A good thing. There was only one step left before the chariot: to make a two-wheeled cart, to climb on it, and to take a bow in hands. This was done by representatives of the Sintashti culture approximately in the 2nd millennium BC, and then it went on from there. At first, the chariot was used simply as a mobile platform for the shooter, quickly drove up to the infantry, shot and drove away, laughing and watching them in anger, shooting the void and trying to catch up with you on their feet. Later, after the capture of ancient Egypt by the Hyksos and liberation from their rule, chariots moved to a new level. They became a weapon of state importance. The pharaohs themselves fought on them. In parallel, chariots developed in other ancient states. Hittites and Assyrians used them on the battlefields, turning them from mobile shooting platforms into heavy tanks, on which sat sometimes 4 people, in armor with spears, darts, bows, and shields. In such a form, this weapon was adopted by Persians, using war chariots in war, including with the Greek polis of Asia Minor. And this is where there was a qualitative leap in the evolution of these weapons. From simple heavy chariots, they turned into sickle-bearing. As it often happens in stories about antiquity, the researchers have terribly few sources. Therefore, even the date of origin of Serponosni chariots we cannot accurately name. But why the Persians needed to change the already worked-out tactics of use of standard battle chariots and hang them with sickles, and all the matter is in constant opponents of Persians at that time, good old Greeks with their hoplites and phalanx. A dense formation of tough men in armor and with huge shields did not allow to turn around neither archers nor cavalry. Shields and bronze armor perfectly protected from arrows. Light infantry died on the points of 3-meter spears, and cavalry was not yet able to break through the gap in this dense formation, nor, for that matter, were the chariots. So the idea to make a tank out of a wagon appeared. The Persians took a strong 2-wheeled quadriga, a chariot in which 4 horses were harnessed, raised its sides almost to the waist of the charioteer, strengthened with bronze scales and attached a door behind. Through it the warrior, completely covered with armor, especially hands, head, and face, went inside, closing it behind him. As Nefedkin emphasizes, if earlier there could be 2 to 4 people in the chariot, now there was only one driver. The sickle-bearing carriage itself became a weapon. For greater safety, the horses were also covered with armor. Headpieces, breastplates, and blankets with bronze scales perfectly protected them from accidental hits. The main innovation was the huge, almost 1-meter sickles attached to the axle of the wheels, located parallel to the ground. The axle was stationary during the movement, so that the blades did not spin, but cut off the legs of hesitant infantrymen. Moreover, the Persians attached 2 more smaller sickles under the bottom of the wagon, apparently in order to kill those who fell under the hooves of their horses. And so these monsters rode onto the battlefields and caused problems at first. The idea was as follows. The charioteer accelerated the chariot before attacking the line of hoplites. The armor protected him and his horses from the rare throwing guns, and the heaviness of the carriage and acceleration allowed to break through the line and cause confusion in the unbroken phalanx. As soon as the monolith broke, cavalrymen would rush into the gaps and complete the rout, so the chariots themselves, if and killed, then not much, their main task, to break through the formation and give the opportunity to break into the gaps allied cavalry. After the conquest of Persia by Alexander the Great, the Persian tradition of Serponosni chariots intercepted Hellenistic power Seleucid. They developed the idea by attaching another blade on the axle, at an angle to the ground, another blade on the yoke to the side horses. On the drawbar, that is, the bar that came out from under the bottom of the chariot, and on which the yoke was attached, they attached a spear. The blades under the bottom were removed. Apparently, in practice, they rather hindered, clinging to uneven ground and corpses. Now in front of the chariot protruded a powerful spear, and additional blades allowed even more effectively cut the infantry, who had no time to scatter. After the fall of the Seleucid power, sickle-bearing chariots survived one more, the last dawn, in the Pontic kingdom of King Mithridates, and then finally fell into oblivion. Pontians attached one more blade to the yoke of the horse, lightened his armor, and that was the end of it. The first documented application of Serpanosni chariots was in the already mentioned battle at Cunaxa, and nothing interesting it did not end. Cyrus, the pretender on the Persian throne, and Tsar Artaxerxes fought. Chariots of the Tsar have attacked hoplites' mercenaries, but those have parted and shouted scared horses. After that, charioteers have simply jumped off chariots and have run away, such a weak debut in the pages of history. As fought Serpanosni chariots before that, we simply do not know. There are no sources. Soon chariots rehabilitated themselves in a small battle at Dascalion. Then the Spartans were fighting in Asia Minor, and their detachment ran into a division of the Persian satrap Pharnabazus, which had 2 Serpanosni chariots. But even that was enough. The Greeks, seeing the Persians, rushed to form a phalanx, and at that moment 2 chariots flew into them at full gallop, scattering the hoplites who tried to gather together. The horsemen rushed into the breaches left by the chariots and began to cut down the confused Spartans. In the end, 100 Greeks were killed, and the rest fled. In this case, the weapon worked properly. At the acceleration flew into not fully built phalanx and opened the way for a cavalry strike. But it was not always so successful. In the famous Battle of Gaugamela, the king of the Persians made a special bet on the attack of Serpanosni chariots. But he miscalculated. Sarissophares of Alexander the Great raised a wild noise, frightening some of the horses, which turned around and cut their troops instead of others. Some of the chariots were lost to the fire of the Macedonians' light infantry, and those that did reach the formation were allowed inside, where the horses were skewered with spears, and the charioteers were slaughtered. But even a part of the chariots that successfully entered the formation made trouble. The Greek historian Diodorus of Sicily writes that sickles were often cut on necks, sending heads to gallop on the ground with still open eyes. Chariots have not helped Persians, and Seleucids have not especially helped. Examples of successful applications of sickle chariots by them, history is unknown, but Pontic king Mithridates once applied them brilliantly. Pontic king Mithridates began to war with the Romans, wresting from them and their allies one area of Asia Minor after another. And here his generals Neoptolemy and Archelaus met the army of the Roman ally King Nicomedes of Bithynia on the river Amnias. The armies of the Pontic strategists were outnumbered, but they had any number of sickle-bearing chariots, which in those days were already considered archaic. Nicomedes' troops, having defeated Neoptolemy's infantry, chased after him, but were attacked from the right flank by a detachment of Archelaus. Turning toward the new threat, they regrouped and engaged in battle. Archelaus withdrew his troops, drew back his opponent, and at that moment, suddenly the sickle-bearing chariots slammed into Nicomedes' soldiers at full gallop, wreaking havoc. Panic-stricken soldiers were killed by the infantry and cavalry of Mithridates' commanders, capturing huge booty. So ended the glorious way of Serpanosni chariots. The last mention of their use was the Battle of Zela, when Julius Caesar repulsed the attack of Chariots' Pontic king Pharnac, ordering legionaries to throw them pilums, heavy darts. Allegedly, it was about this fleeting victory that the commander uttered the famous phrase, "I came, I saw, I won." So ended the era of sickle chariots, a miracle weapon that was more frightening than killing, although it killed terribly. As soon as people got used to it and stopped being afraid of it, its importance on the battlefields decreased to almost zero, leaving us only the memories of ancient historians about this amazing tank of antiquity.